Good morning, everyone. We might as well get started. It is 9:01, and so we will roll. I'd like to thank everyone here. I see about 66 people tuned in, and there's a lot more being let in from the lobby at this point. That's great. My name is Dwayne Duncanson. I am the supervisor of the Municipal Stormwater Regulatory Program here at the MPCA, and I'd like to thank and welcome everybody for
getting that up and going. And
I'll start out with one of our housekeeping items. If you can keep your mute on, that would be great during the session. But this is the first of many sessions that we plan to have, and I will just roll right into it. I'm going to share my screen. And if somebody could let me know if this can be seen, that would be great.
Yes, we can see your screen, Dwayne.
Thank you. All right, so again, welcome to the first outreach and Q&A session that we're having, first of many. We're going to have about 12 of these, at least one a month. I think many of you have probably seen the emails that have come out. We hope to have these every Thursday or every third Thursday of every month for the next 12 months, covering a variety of different topics related to stormwater regulation, and hopefully everybody finds these very helpful. I know that we will. I'd like to start out by introducing the MS4 program staff that we have here on this call. We're all here and available to help answer questions. And so I'll start out with myself, Dwayne Duncanson. Again, I'm the program supervisor. We have Scott Fox, who takes care of a lot of the municipal stormwater related policy that we have. Brian Green, who is our compliance coordinator. Cole Landgraf, who is our permit writer, who was the chief author and project manager for the permit that was just reissued. Does a lot of other things as well. And we have Carly Cheldall, municipal stormwater specialist. Does a lot of audits, compliance and enforcement, technical assistance, outreach, contract management. And that could be said also for Jeremy Sanoski, also a municipal stormwater specialist, Nick Nisler, and Raj Heck. They all do very similar things. And then we have Anna Bosch, who is our stormwater TMDL liaison. And there's a lot around TMDLs with municipal stormwater, so she plays a pretty big role in the stormwater and TMDL world. So as the agenda indicates, I'm going to talk about a few program updates here. I think every one of these sessions will include an update piece, and we will provide updates as we get them, or if there are any requests for certain updates at any of these sessions, feel free to send in emails and ask about these things, and we'll do our best to cover them. I just introduced the MPCA staff that is on the call today. And I want to talk a little bit about the goal and the purpose of these outreach sessions. So as many of you on this call know, we just reissued the general stormwater permit for small MS4s in November of 2020. And there was a fairly lengthy application submittal period. And then we put the permit out there. We public noticed all the applications, and we are in the process now of finishing up getting everybody under coverage under this new permit. And the permit has a requirement in it that anything new that is new to this permit, as opposed to the 2013 permit, must be incorporated into programs within 12 months after receiving coverage under this new permit. And so during this 12 months, we want to have a presence, a helpful presence, an outreach and technical assistance in nature presence with our regulated community and other practitioners, partners of our regulated communities, and consultants, anybody who is in this stormwater business. We'd like to provide assistance. and what it really means and what is expected in bringing local stormwater programs up to speed with the permit, and certainly new provisions of the permit. And so that is our goal and purpose of having these outreach sessions for the next 12 months. And then I think we do intend to have outreach sessions even beyond that on an ongoing basis. And so on that, if any of you out there have questions that you have about an upcoming topic that we will be talking about, we highly encourage those questions to be sent in prior to the outreach session. Our next outreach session is scheduled for November 18th. I do believe that is going to be on minimum control measure 5, or the post-construction stormwater requirements of the MS4 permit. But we will wait to see what the survey has to say when we give the survey here in just a little bit during this session. But for example, if you have any questions related to post-construction stormwater management, we highly encourage you to send those in to this email address right here, ms4permitprogram.pca@state.mn.us. We really appreciate getting those questions in as far as in advance as possible, so that we can have some time to craft some really good answers for those questions. So with that, I will move on to the permitting update. As I said, we reissued the permit in November of 2020. All applicants had 5 months to submit the application. So we get 5 months. That's a lot of time to put together a good application, because a good application is very important. That means we're able to identify it as complete and then move forward in the process rather than incomplete. So good applications are good. April 15th was the deadline for submittal of those applications, and then by law we must take those applications and put them on public notice for 30 days. And we have completed that entire process. All 247 members of our regulated community have been public noticed. So now we are in the process of actually issuing coverage under the reissued permit at this point in time, and expect to be finished with that probably in mid-November, pretty close. There might be a couple of stragglers that we have to complete yet, but by mid-November, everybody should be covered under the new permit. At this point in time, we have approximately 140 MS4s, maybe 150 covered under the new MS4 permit, and we are making a very quick headway in getting the rest covered now. And as I said, we had to public notice all applications and give the public a shot at reviewing these applications and requesting a hearing if they, if needed, or if they felt they needed a hearing or wanted a hearing, and also submit comment about an individual municipality's application. And at this point in time, we have actually received 0 public comments on any application that we put out on public notice. So I just wanted to give you that update. If you have any other questions about our permitting process and our current efforts to get everybody under a permit, please let us know. We also wanted to give you an update on the annual report, and for that I'm going to let Cole Landgraf, our permit writer and coordinator of our annual reports, give a quick update on how we're going to handle annual reporting for calendar year 2021, and that annual report is due by June 30th of 2022. So Cole, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dwayne. So the short answer for the annual report is it's going to be the same format as it's been previous years. You're still going to do SNAP survey for 1 more year. So you're going to report on all activities completed over calendar year 2021, and it's going to reflect the 2013 permit. It's going to be that same format, same questions as you answered this current year. So we did that because we understand that all permittees were covered for the majority of this calendar year under the 2013 permit. So rather than ask you on what kind of progress you've made towards meeting the new requirements, we just want to keep it the same for now. And then in 2022, we're actually going to be working on updating the annual report process. We actually are engage in the very initial stages of developing an e-service for permittees. So we've kind of been historically lower priority. We only have 247 permittees, so we kind of e-service is new to us, but we're hopeful that we'll have an e-service, a permanent e-service that you'll beginning in 2023 for filling out the 2022 annual report. We'll have an e-service that you'll log into and provide information going forward for meeting the new permit requirements. So some of our goals with the new e-service is to make it a one-stop shop. So for those of you that have done TMDL reporting in the past, you know you have to fill out an Excel spreadsheet. We hope to incorporate that as part of the e-service. So rather than going and having to retrieve your Excel spreadsheet, update that every year, it's just you just go into this e-service login, fill it out, and provide its information that way. So we also do have some new e-reporting requirements through the EPA. They want some information from different MS4 permitting programs. So we're going to have to take a closer look at that and see what kind of information the EPA wants. But some things are going to stay the same. We're still going to ask you questions about, how many inspections you perform for like outfalls and BMP inspections and that sort of thing. But there might be some new things that we have to look at as part of the e-reporting rules. So takeaways, next year's annual report that you're going to be filling out due June of 2022, SNAP survey one more time, one last year, and then moving forward, the annual report due in 2023. Hopefully we'll have that e-service online, and that'll be the process moving forward. Thanks, Dwayne.
Thank you, Cole. And then the last item on the program updates, I'd just like to cover a little housekeeping. We intend for this to be a pretty informal type of session format. Our goal here is to answer questions and dispel myths if that's necessary, interpret permit requirements. The intended outcome here is that everybody on this call better understands what this regulatory program is all about, what the permit is all about, and what is expected. So I'd like to keep it fairly informal. When you have questions, you can raise your hand. We will try to keep an eye on those little virtual hands that are raised. You can put questions in the chat. Some of my folks here will be monitoring the chat, and or just click off your mute and ask a question. I will actually try, some of you may have questions about some of the things that we've talked about here in this update. I'm going to try to make my way through the 101 presentation. Today's presentation is the basics about MS4 stormwater regulation. I know that there's a lot of folks out there that maybe are new to the business of stormwater and managing stormwater, and so there's probably a lot of folks on this call that are veterans in stormwater regulation, and so this may not be quite as helpful, but this is intended to just start these sessions out with the basics. So we'll try to work our way through the 101 presentation, which is only about 15 minutes long, and then we will open it up. The majority of the session will be about questions and answers, and so if you can hold your questions until then, that would be great, and we'll work our way through this presentation. So right now, I'm going to turn this over to Carly Cheldall, and we have a little Mentimeter survey, a few questions that we would like to go through. So Carly, please take that away.
All right, thanks, Dwayne. So if everybody, I don't know if anybody has used Mentimeter before, but it's kind of a cool interactive tool that we're going to be using here this morning. And I'm going to be posting in the chat, hopefully, if I can find it, the link on where to access this. And what you're going to do is just open your browser, click on this link, or copy and paste it, whatever works for you. And when that tab opens, you should be getting to a question like this. Looks like some of you are already answering. Basically, you just choose your answer, and then it will say the presenter, hasn't moved to the next slide. It should move automatically as I move the presentation, and I'll just keep this open, I guess, for a couple minutes, and then we'll see. I know there's like about 90 people on the call, so hopefully we can get roughly an answer from everybody. And I'm assuming everyone's finding it okay because everyone's like answering, and I don't see anything in the chat. So
Nobody is joining us from the cabin.
I guess not. All right. I think I might wrap it up in like 30 seconds. All right. Well, it looks like majority of you that have answered are joining us from the office. So I'm going to move on to the next question. And if you're pulled up in your browser, it should automatically move forward as I move. The question is, what organization are you representing today? All right, looks like majority of us today are representing a city organization, but it looks like we got at least one person from all the other entities that we regulate under the MS4 permit. I'm going to move on to the next question. So how long have you been working with the MS4 permit? All right, awesome. It looks like we got a nice little range here of everyone that's here today. There's kind of a wide span, so that's great to see. That's it for the Mentimeter questions right now for me. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dwayne and he can get started on the presentation.
Thank you, Carly. And can everyone see the presentation now?
Yes.
All right, I got to whip through these. Okay, so I like to.
You're not in presentation mode though.
I'm not.
Now you are.
All right, we will get this virtual thing figured out someday. Now I'm in presentation mode.
Yep.
Okay. So I like to start, I would like to start out with a little stormwater program background. I think it's a little helpful to understand where this stormwater program comes from, how long it's been around, why it's there. And, we'll start out talking about the 1972, the promulgation of the Clean Water Act. And I first have to say that, the first water regulations was actually in 1948 in the federal Water Pollution Control Act, and that was from 1948 up until 1972. And that Water Pollution Control Act needed a lot of work. They realized that in 1972, so they completely overhauled it and they reorganized it, they renamed it, they included a lot of new regulations. And so the Clean Water Act, as we know it today, was really born in 1972. And at that time, the Clean Water Act really focused on the regulation of point source discharges, the typical traditional point source discharges that we all know, wastewater treatment plant pipes, industrial facility type pipes that lead to our receiving waters. And At that point in time, the EPA knew that they could not handle the regulation of water across the entire country without help. And it was at that time also that they basically asked all the states out there to raise their hand who wanted to be a delegated state permitting authority. And 44 states raised their hand. Minnesota was one of them. There are still 6 states out there that have not been delegated authority by EPA to administer the Clean Water Act. But Minnesota is a delegated state permitting authority. And so that's where this all came about. We began regulating wastewater and some of those traditional wastewater, industrial wastewater type of discharges way back then. But it became very apparent over the next dozen years or so that it wasn't just those discharges that were harming our receiving waters. The stormwater discharges were becoming an increasing and a problem that people were realizing. And so in 1987, Congress amended the Clean Water Act of 1972 to address stormwater discharges. And so Congress mandated that the EPA develop a 2-phased program for the management of stormwater specifically. Now, some of you may have heard these terms thrown around in the past, phase 1, phase 2. That's where all of this comes from. Sometimes we refer to our permits as phase 1 permits or phase 2 permits. And so this is where the roots of those terms come from. So in 1987, Congress, they amended the Clean Water Act. The EPA came up with this 2-phased approach. Phase 1 included the regulation of stormwater from 3 sources. These are the top 3 sources of stormwater problems. Construction projects. In phase 1, they drew the threshold at 5 acres or more of land disturbance. And then they regulated 11 categories of industries, and this is actually about 500 different SIC codes. And there are normally manufacturing industries that are regulated, and that's the industrial stormwater program. And then they wanted to regulate municipalities, and they started out in phase 1 early on regulating medium and large municipalities across the country with these regulations, serving populations of 100,000 or more. Now in Minnesota, we do not have any medium-sized municipalities. We only have large municipalities, which is over 250,000 people. So we don't have any between 100,000 and 250,000. That is the definition of medium, except for technically Rochester and maybe the city of Duluth have just popped over 100,000. But the definition of large MS4 is frozen per the 2000 census. So that means that even if Rochester and Duluth go over 100,000, which I believe they did during the 2010 census, they are not going to be regulated as a large municipality. They will be regulated as a small MS4 until the EPA decides to revise 40 CFR and the federal regulations, which I don't think they have any intention of doing so anytime soon. So as was always the plan, they revised the stormwater regulations in 1999. This is the second phase of regulating stormwater. They have still the 3 main sources of stormwater that are to be regulated, but they dropped the threshold for construction activity down to 1 acre rather than 5. They added some additional categories of industries to be regulated, again, manufacturing industries. And this is where the small MS4s, small municipalities came in. And that's why we call all of our small MS4s regulated under the general permit phase 2 MS4s. And so we will move on as to, so after the EPA revised the last set of federal regulations in 99, the MPCA had to get busy writing rules. We could not administer this federal program at the state level without having our own rules to do so. And so in 2001, we promulgated Minnesota Rule 7090, which is all about our stormwater regulation for construction, industrial, and municipal stormwater. In 2002, we issued the very first general permit for small MS4s. And immediately upon the issuance of that first permit, the MPCA got sued. We got sued by the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. They cited seven areas in this lawsuit that the MPCA was in violation. And after the dust settled during the court proceedings, it was found that we were only in violation of 3 of the 7 things. One of those was that we did not address non-degradation properly. The other one was we did not allow proper opportunity for the public to comment and request a hearing on applications for the permit, or we call those stormwater pollution prevention plan documents. And that is the 30-day public notice period that I talked about earlier. And then the third thing is very minor. We used the word minimize in the permit, and it should have been reduce. And so we changed the word minimize to reduce. But nonetheless, it took us about 2.5 years to iron out those wrinkles, correct those things, and we finally got the permit back out there in 2006. I really call this the first permit, even though the 2002 permit was the first one. The 06 permit was really the first real permit that we had out there. As many of you may or may not know, these permits are 5-year permits. We are required under our delegation to reissue these permits every 5 years. If we do not make that 5-year deadline in getting them reissued, every member of the regulated community is fine. They can legally operate under an expired permit for as long as necessary until such time as the agency renews coverage under a new permit. So even though this permit in 2006 expired in 2011, it took us a couple of years beyond that to get the next permit reissued, and that was the 2013 permit, the one that just expired. Again, that's a 5-year permit. It expired in 2018, and again, it took a couple of years beyond that to get it reissued, and here is where we are now. The 2020 permit issued in November of 2020, and this is the one that we are working very hard to get everybody under coverage now. And so this is kind of the basics of the MS4 regulatory program. And I like to start out with, what does MS4 really mean? And most everybody on this call knows that it stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. But a lot of folks even have questions about what that really means. And so I like to break it apart and talk about the first word, municipal. In the stormwater regulatory world, municipality means a certain thing, and it is defined in federal and state regulations. Municipality must be a government entity that has jurisdiction over the discharge of stormwater to our lakes, rivers, streams, and wetlands, and who operate under federal and state law. So it is definitely a public entity, and it's not just cities, and it's not just townships. We have large complexes, the Mall of America, for example. That is privately owned. We have huge hospitals. Those are privately owned. They all have storm sewer systems, and large ones many times. But we do not regulate private entities. It is only public entities. And so this is a look at our current regulated universe in the MS4 world in terms of small MS4 permittees. We have 174 cities, 24 townships, 19 colleges and universities, 15 counties, 9 watershed districts, 3 prisons. We issue 2 permits to MnDOT. We call it MnDOT Outstate and MnDOT Metro. And then we have 1 hospital, which is the Federal Medical Center up in St. Cloud. And, many of you may ask, 174 cities, we know that there are over 850 official cities in the state of Minnesota. We also know that there's over 1,800 townships in the state of Minnesota. There's many colleges and universities. There's a million miles of MnDOT roadways across the state. Why is it only these that we regulate? And the answer to that is that it's all in 7090, the stormwater regulations that I talked about. And it's a function of proximity to special waters, population density, and urbanized area as defined by the decennial census every 10 years. And we just cannot regulate every community across the state of Minnesota. That's not even practical. But what we know is that where large groups of people reside and live, we just kind of are filthy creatures by nature, and we are very hard on stormwater. And so this is a look across the state of Minnesota where our regulated MS4s lie. We have done some calculations in terms of land area. We only regulate for stormwater, municipal stormwater, about 4% of the land area across the state. So 96% of the state has no controls or regulatory controls over stormwater discharges from a municipality standpoint. And we currently have 247 regulated small MS4s. And just to let you know, we actually have 249 regulated MS4s. The other two are our phase 1 or large MS4s, Minneapolis and St. Paul. So when we take a look at separate storm sewer, what does that really mean? And many of you may or may not know again that years ago in Minnesota, sanitary and storm sewers were combined, and that caused a lot of problems. We don't want sanitary water in our stormwater. Because that gets discharged to our receiving waters, and it causes all kinds of problems like beach closings. But also, when you put that much, send that much water to a wastewater treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plants can't handle it. So through some very good regulation that began some 25 years ago or so, the state of Minnesota, along with many other states across the country, began the process of separating sewers. And I'm happy to report that in the state of Minnesota, technically on paper, the entire state of Minnesota and all municipalities have been successful in separating all storm sewers from sanitary sewers, with the exception of the city of Minneapolis. And as you can imagine, based on the old and the complex infrastructure of that particular city, there is an ongoing effort to manage what is remaining of combined sewers. But the takeaway here on this slide is that this permit and this program is only about the separated storm sewers. If there is a sewer out there that is still combined with sanitary, it does not
Dwayne, I think we lost you. I'm gonna guess he had some connection issues. Hopefully he'll be rejoining us.
This has happened in some of our internal meetings as well, so I would guess he'll sign back in and be back here shortly.
I sincerely apologize. I lost my internet connection, so I am back now. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Where did you lose me?
We lost you around you're finished up your explanation of combined sewers.
Okay. Are we back to seeing my presentation?
Yes.
So I was talking about combined sewers. Did you hear me talk about how Minnesota has largely been successful in separating combined and sanitary sewers?
Yes.
Okay. So with the exception of Minneapolis, has some combined sewers to yet separate, but that's going to take it quite a while. And so this is only about separated storm sewer systems, this regulatory program, owned or operated by municipalities. And what do we mean by system? And I like to best characterize system as a complex array of stormwater conveyances and associated treatment practices, ponds, rain gardens, the whole interconnected system that is under the ownership and operational control of a municipality. And so that is kind of a detailed description of MS4, what it means, and I think it's important to understand that so that we know as municipalities out there just exactly what is regulated and what isn't. When we talk about a system, we're talking about our pipes above ground, underground. We're talking about our rain gardens, our whole interconnected system, grassy swales, curbs and gutters, stormwater ponds, and the outfall pipe, which marks the end of our system. This is where, and this is defined, we worked a long time with stakeholders to create a definition of outfall, but this is the point where water leaves your system and it never comes back. And that is the point where we strive to make the water as clean as we can make it. And that is done by following EPA's theory. How do we reduce pollutants to the maximum extent that we can that are discharged from our systems to receiving waters across Minnesota? And they established during the creation of the stormwater regulations that there are 6 focus areas that are critical for a local program to be effective in reaching the goals of the Clean Water Act by reducing pollutants in discharges that leave our system. And they came up with 6 minimum control measures, and many of you are already familiar with these. But the first critical focus area that they believe is necessary is the proper education of the community, the members that live in the community. Things they can do to manage stormwater or reduce pollutants in stormwater discharges as homeowners, as citizens. It's also about educating businesses and industries and institutions within your community. A well-educated community probably it goes a long way in reducing pollutants. The second critical focus area is getting the community involved, and that is done in a couple of ways. And we have permit requirements surrounding all of these 6 minimum control measures, general permit requirements. And when we involve the community, it's a healthy thing. When we provide a mechanism and an opportunity for community members who are interested in how stormwater is managed or protecting the resources within or around a community, when a local government provides a mechanism for them to provide feedback to decision makers at the local municipality, that is a good thing. And so there are permit requirements around that, also involving the community. There are so many other programs, storm drain stenciling programs, adopt a storm drain program, adopt a highway program. There's all kinds of ways that a municipality can actually engage community members in protecting stormwater. So that's what minimum control measure 2 is all about. Another critical focus area is developing, implementing, and enforcing a local program to detect and eliminate what we call illicit discharges. And so if we intentionally, as decision makers in the municipality and workers in the municipality, employees, search for, ferret out, and eliminate illicit discharges, that is a good thing. We do this through an ordinance. And this is the first of 3 ordinances that a municipality is required to have. So you are required to have an ordinance that prohibits the discharge of pollutants to your system that can be an illicit discharge. And there are so many illicit discharges out there. We have a lot of regulated municipalities out there that have a lot of experience with illicit discharges. There's so many different kinds: carpet cleaners, concrete trucks washing out in the curbs and gutters. We need to have a system at the local level that where we can take action, stop those illicit discharges, and take enforcement when necessary. So that's what this critical focus area is all about. The fourth one is also developing, implementing, and enforcing an effective oversight program of active construction within your communities. This is construction that disturbs 1 or more acres of total land area. This is about having an ordinance, again, that has requirements in it for active construction. This is about performing inspections. This is about taking enforcement. This is all about preventing these construction projects from bleeding sediment from the project into your system so that you can minimize what comes out of your system, out of the outfall to the receiving water. Number 5 is, once that active construction is complete, minimum control measure 5 is all about requiring and ensuring that practices are installed and put in that manage stormwater responsibly and well for the long term, many years after the project is complete. This is about keeping water on the landscape to the degree we can through infiltration. And so again, this requires an ordinance and requirements for all project proposers in local communities, and requirements that they must follow in order to get this done and achieve these goals. And then minimum control measure 6 is about managing your own stormwater infrastructure. This is all of your interconnected system, your conveyances, the best management practices that we have installed. This is about inspecting your system, your whole system, and maintaining it so that it functions properly and operates effectively to remove pollutants, excavating ponds, dredging ponds, returning rain gardens their functionality so that they actually work. Cleaning out, ditches and swales. It's everything about your interconnected system and managing it well. And the EPA's theory is that if these, and before I go into that, there's actually, I won't call it a minimum control measure 7, but it's kind of a minimum control measure 7 for any municipality that is subject to a total maximum daily load. There are also permit requirements that surrounding that, that every municipality has to undertake or comply with in order to make progress towards achieving what we call waste load allocations to restore impaired waters. And I'll talk more about that here in just a second. So EPA's theory is that if these 6 critical focus areas are done well, keeping illicit, educating the community, involving the community, keeping those illicit discharges out of the curbs and gutters, the ditches and swales, the ponds up in the upland from our receiving waters, managing construction sites properly, making sure that post-construction is done properly, and then just managing our own infrastructure, we are going to effectively achieve the goals of the Clean Water Act by keeping typical urban pollutants like litter and oil, chemicals, toxic metals, and so on out of our system so that it doesn't come out the outfall to our receiving waters. And so if a community like this has a TMDL, total maximum daily load, with an associated waste load allocation, it is really about effectively doing the 6 minimum control measures. And in addition to that, taking other measures in order to restore the impaired water. So if this lake right here in this picture is impaired, we need to restore it. And so it might be through retrofit projects, it might be through redevelopment projects where we can actually gain some reduction in pollutants to the receiving water. And so that's about TMDLs. That topic and that subject is deserving of its own outreach and Q&A session. And we will be having one of those sessions soon on TMDLs. And so we will talk and go way more in depth about TMDLs, but that's generally what TMDLs are about. And the permit does have some requirements about TMDLs. And so that completes my presentation, and at this point in time, we'd like to open it up for Q&A. So, you know, again, I'd like this to be informal. Click off your mute button, raise your hand, chat. Please let us know any questions you have about anything we talked about today, issuing permits, about the permit, about the program. We are here for you. I see a hand. I don't know who it is. Jordan. Can folks hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Jordan, if you can, if you're able to unmute yourself, go ahead and ask the question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Sorry, I had the wrong microphone switched on there. Say, I just wanted to ask about your outfall definition there. So it sounded like you defined an outfall in terms of the permit as somewhere where water is permanently leaving your MS4 system. So when the permit refers to outfall inspections to be done under the permit, is that the same definition that's used there as well?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
Yep. So inlets to ponds or outlets to ponds, neither one, a stormwater pond that's just used for treating stormwater, those are not outfalls. It is only where the points that mark the end of your system, where the water leaves your system either to somebody else's system or to a receiving water. Those are what we intend to be outfalls.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
It looks like Cole has a question, Cole Johnson. And Dwayne, you're still sharing your screen, just so you know.
Thank you. Now I'm not.
Yeah, this is Cole Johnson. I was just curious, this is probably a little specific for the general overview of the MS4 permit, but I was just curious if there's been any like model ordinance stuff put out yet for the new salt storage requirements within the MS4 permit that cities can follow and incorporate into their own ordinance.
So specific to salt storage.
Yeah.
Cole, I'm going to have to refer to you on that one.
Yeah, and I can answer that, Cole. There is a model ordinance, and I'll go find the link quick and post in the chat, but there is a bulk storage model ordinance out there and available. It's on our chloride statewide resources page, and I'll go track it down for you and put that in the chat.
Perfect. Appreciate it. And I don't know, is that something that you could see? My thoughts is incorporating that into part of our illicit discharge ordinance. Would you see that as a applicable area for that to go?
Yeah, that would be more than fine. We're pretty open to however makes most sense for your community to, as far as incorporating into appropriate part of your city ordinance. But yeah, that would make sense in my eyes.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And then Kelly asked about a model pet waste ordinance. And Carly, you might know more about it than I do. I do believe we have one out there.
Yes, we had one created through a work order. I think it's on the stormwater manual. I can find the link and put it in the chat for you.
And to just let everybody know too, we have been working pretty hard on creating a model ordinance for minimum control measures 4 active construction and minimum control measure 5 post-construction. The intent behind this is to provide something to the regulated community that can be used, that if followed very closely would be in automatic compliance with the MS4 permit, and certainly our expectations in terms of what we should find in an ordinance. We have a draft that we are actually seeking some peer review on at the moment, and within a month, a month or so, we hope to have that model ordinance finalized and out there on the stormwater manual for consumption by anybody who wants to use it. Cole? Johnson? Oh,
Sorry, I didn't lower my hand. I think somebody else raised their hand.
I did see another hand.
Hi, Dwayne. This is Lindsay from the city of Rochester.
Yes.
Can you just kind of repeat a little bit what you said about the difference between the phase 1 and phase 2 permits and then moving from one to the other? I was kind of under the impression that the city of Rochester should expect at some point in the near future to be moving to the other phase as the population gets larger. Maybe my terminology is not correct. But you said that it's unlikely that the EPA would revise the ordinance to. Can you just revisit that?
Absolutely.
Okay,
if you were to open up the 1999 Federal Register, it specifically talks about how their intent is to freeze the definition of large MS4 per the 2000 decennial census. And until the EPA revises the 1999 regulations, it will stay that way. Which means, as far as I'm concerned, until they revise those regulations, we are going to regulate any municipality that exceeds a population of 100,000 as a small MS4. Once they revise the regulations, provide some detail on what the EPA expects, I don't see why we would move from that. And from my understanding, the EPA has no intention of opening up 40 CFR and revising them anytime soon. So for the foreseeable future, Rochester, the city of Duluth, which I think is right around 100,000 too, they are not going to be regulated as anything other than a small MS4. Does that answer your question?
yes, thank you.
Okay.
Hi there. This is Stephanie, also from the city of Rochester. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So you had mentioned at the very beginning that so far you've received 0 public comments for any permit issuance update that's been sent out. I'm just curious if the PCA has expectations for the permitted or to be permitted communities to encourage public comment.
There's nothing in the permit for this particular process that requires our regulated communities to seek comment. We rely and stand on our own laws and regs about how we have to engage the public with our process. And we have a pretty rigorous process. In fact, we did a lot of additional things this go around than we did back in 2013. In making sure that interested and affected parties are aware that they have an opportunity to review all of these stormwater pollution prevention plan documents that were submitted as part of the application forms of all of our regulated MS4s, and that this is now their opportunity to review it and either request a hearing or submit public comments. And so we reached out to community members that we've never reached out before. And we still did not receive any public comments. So If a public comment were to be submitted, it would come to us. We would take that comment and give it to the regulated municipality for addressing that comment and to the commenter. And so that just has not happened at this point in time.
Okay, great. Yeah, because Rochester, we put it up on our website just to promote it as like an extra step. And it's interesting to hear that still even going a little bit beyond what expectations are, that there aren't any public comments, which means that we're doing it perfectly, right?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. But I get nervous when I jump to those conclusions. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I encourage everybody here to not be shy about asking questions. I mean, let's just, we are here to, if there are any misunderstandings, interpretations, myths, we're here to just talk through these kinds of things. And so this is a 2-hour session for doing that. So I see a question here. Prior to 2006, it sounded like MPCA was called out for not doing enough, leading to the 2006 permit. Is there any indications that the feeling that MPCA is not doing enough in this permit is still prevalent? Well, I can tell you that the organizations that might allege that we are not doing enough would be the environmental group type of organizations, Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy. We have Ducks Unlimited, those other type of environmental groups, and we have not heard anything about that at this point in time, not in the stormwater realm. I mean, there are other programs around the agency that some might say we're not doing enough, but in terms of municipal stormwater, I have not heard much about that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Valerie Brady?
I think I might be can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I think I might be the lone small township representative. But so our township, right as the permit was being submitted, our township was one of those that got caught up in that new rule with like what land is actually under regulation. And we were told, just go ahead and submit. We're going to figure this out later because we know there's no time right now and everybody's going to have to go back to maps and all sorts of things to try to figure this out. And I'm just wondering what we can expect and how that process is going to go. We were a little confused as to how we will figure out how this works now for us, what's regulated, what's not, and all that.
All right. I think I can clear some of that up. So there was some legislation passed last session, and this was legislation that only pertains to cities and townships. Anybody who's familiar with, and I'm sure all of you read Minnesota Rule 7090 on a regular basis, just kidding, but if you did, you would see in the current rule that it says that any township or city that has any urbanized area as defined by the decennial census is regulated throughout the entire jurisdiction. And so what that means is we know that there's a lot of townships and cities out there that have just a portion of their jurisdiction covered by urbanized area as defined by the census. And what our rule says is even though urbanized area covers only a portion of your jurisdiction, your entire jurisdiction is regulated. Well, the cities and the townships lobbied to change that. And so basically to cut to the chase, the legislation now says, and this is a law, and so it's final, that townships and cities are no longer regulated in the entire jurisdiction. If you are partially covered by urbanized area, you are only regulated where you have urbanized area. And so we did a calculation, some analysis, and figured out that there are 38 townships and cities out there that are affected by this. So if urbanized area covers your whole city or township, this legislation is not even relevant. It's only if you're partially covered by an urbanized area. And so, Valerie, your township up there, Duluth Township, right?
Yeah,
I know,
sorry, I can't hit unmute fast enough.
Duluth Township, I know that you are partially covered and very partially covered by urbanized area. Now, this legislation will not deregulate or get any city or township out of the program. So it's not about that at all. It's just more about where, what areas within your jurisdiction, what areas you must manage stormwater. And so a large portion of your jurisdiction, you may not have to focus stormwater management out there. It's only in the urbanized area. And so I think what you were more specifically referring to is how this legislation changes what a municipality has to do in terms of TMDLs. And so I don't know, Anna, if you want to chime in here, but we do have some future plans to work with those 38 MS4s. To better sort out and define what it is exactly that this legislation means for somebody who has to comply with the TMDL and meet a waste load allocation, because some things change. Anna?
Yeah, well, as Rick Baird put in the chat, the platted areas is, we know where our urbanized area is. The platted areas is quite confusing as well, because there's apparently a whole bunch of things in our township that got platted and never built. So we don't even know where they are, because they're from I don't know, people were doing land grabs in the 50s or something. I don't know. So that was pretty confusing. And then so how that intersects with TMDLs is where we really get confused.
And, I think in the future, there's going to be more clarifications around this. This is new to us as well. And as with any lawmaker and those who create legislation, sometimes there's details that are missing that even makes it hard for an agency responsible for implementing such a rule difficult, because we don't quite understand. Things are evolving on this topic. But I did fail to mention that this new legislation says that you're only regulated where you are urbanized per the census. And then it says, quote, and other platted areas. So the League of Minnesota Cities, and we talked with them, they provided us a definition of platted areas, and that is defined in statute. And we have so far made the decision to lean on the statutory definition of platted areas. And so that's what we mean when we say other platted areas. And we're going to have to rely on our regulated community, our townships and our cities to look at that themselves. I think they better understand, even more so than us, what that definition says, because it's just more part of your business and has been for many years. The counties have a lot to do with this platted area definition, and oftentimes have the GIS files. Because whenever something's platted, it has to be filed with the county, and so they have the records on what is platted and what isn't. And so I think each of these 38 MS4s are probably going to have to confer with the counties in which they lie, and get some of this information so that they can at least create a map of their urbanized area and their other platted areas. And then at least you know exactly where in your jurisdiction is urbanized or platted. And then we will move forward from there. Anna, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. We are still working on the process, and I think we were talking about waiting until after the new urbanized areas come out from the latest census, so we're not doing this twice.
And on that note, I am very personally interested in the 2020 census and the outcome of it in terms of population and new urbanized area maps. Because there's a lot of work and a lot of things that we have to do, and there's a lot of implications with the new urbanized area map in terms of who will be required to come into the program after those maps are released. So I contacted the Census Bureau myself, and I asked them what the timing was going to be to release census area maps, urbanized area maps to all states across the country. And what they told me is summer to fall of 2022. And if history repeats itself, it actually won't be till well into 23 before they actually get those out. But then we have to take those GIS files and do a bunch of analysis to determine if there are any new municipalities who have tripped regulatory triggers because now there is urbanized area that lies within their jurisdictions, or the population has increased to a degree that trips a regulatory trigger and these municipalities must come into the program. I also know that the Census Bureau just underwent an effort to redefine how they identify urbanized area. And they've made some fairly drastic changes. And we read the proposal, and they were asking for comments, and we provided some comments, and we didn't have any because we kind of liked what we saw. And basically, in a nutshell, their redefining of how they calculate urbanized area is going to be better. They say that it's going to be characterized by a shrinkage of urbanized area. There will be no more donut holes or long, slender corridors of urbanized area. And I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but if you look at the urbanized area maps, they look really Frankensteinish, really weird. And it makes it really hard to figure out where somebody should be regulated when there's a long 15-mile sliver of urbanized area on the map, and it's like 16 feet wide. Apparently, this redefining of the urbanized area is going to get rid of a lot of that noise, and it's going to simplify it. And like I said, ultimately shrink some of the urbanized areas. So we'll just have to wait and see, because that has implications, I believe, on the regulation of many municipalities. Valerie?
Yes?
Your hand's still up. It looks like you were wanting.
I'm sorry. I'm not used to this platform. But thank you. Thank you for that explanation. And that is interesting because our township is caught by one of those slivers that you just mentioned. And that's the only reason we're in MS4 as far as we can tell. Not that we don't want to do good things with water. I'm an aquatic ecologist. I'm really personally invested in that. But, you know, managing our 11 miles of dirt roads gets entertaining in this process.
I understand, and you know, I appreciate what Anna said a minute ago, how it might be very advantageous for us to just kind of wait for our new urbanized area maps to come out and kind of reevaluate where we are. And I am not doing a very good job of watching the chat. I'm scrolling back up.
So Dwayne, there's one more question from Kristen Larson regarding the platted question or that legislation, and then above that, Bob Bean's got a question about reissuance. I don't know if you see them, about 10 o'clock, 10:02.
So Bob Bean, are we supposed to receive a letter from the MPCA after the public notice indicating the permit is officially reauthorized? We finished our notice a while ago, but have not received an approval letter yet. Is there going to be a place on your website indicating approvals? Cole, you want to answer the question about coverage letters? I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, so you're not issued, in most cases anyways, you're not going to be issued permit coverage immediately after your application comes out public notice. There's a bit of a internal steps we have to go through to process, kind of do some final steps to actually issue permit coverage. But yeah, you should get an email, Bob, that indicates the date that we issue permit coverage, and it'll have an attachment that has your what you call your like official notice of coverage, which will have your municipality's name on the front cover, when the permit effective date is, and a short letter that indicates that you now have permit coverage under the new permit, the 2020 permit, and your coverage has been terminated under the previous 2013 permit. So it might be a delay if it's if it's been a significant delay, reach out to your MS4 permit staff at the MPCA and you can ask for a quick status update.
It looks like Kristen Larson has a question. Is that also true for counties? You're talking about this legislation and being only regulated in the urbanized area. I believe that's what you're referring to. And that is true. See, the counties back in 2003 or so actually lobbied hard and went to the legislature and got an exemption from being regulated in the entire jurisdiction. And this latest effort for the cities and the townships, they wanted the same things that the counties got way back when, many years ago, and they got it. So yes, short answer to your question is the counties, all counties, and all watershed districts are regulated only in the urbanized area. Cole Johnson, is there an available list for these cities and townships? These 38 that I talked about, there is an available list. Geez, Anna, do we have we put that out on the wiki anywhere as part of some of our guidance?
It might not be on the wiki. I'll work on that next week, but I emailed it to Cole and to Randy, and Randy said he'll send it out to his MCSC list.
Oh, perfect. Man, you guys are on it. Kelly asks, how does the MPCA envision permittees will meet the requirement of 18.5? The permittee must require owners or custodians of pets to remove and properly dispose of feces on permittee-owned land areas. Would any of my staff like to take a shot? Cole, the permit writer, you want to talk about the expectations of 18.5?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so that requirement is through implementation of a regulatory mechanism, so probably through a city or county ordinance. We're not, we don't have a requirement where you're constantly patrolling dog parks or anything like that, but hopefully through education, signage, maybe something's egregious, obviously, and you do have staff out there, they can have a chat with someone if they're violating your local ordinance. But it's a broad requirement that we're hoping through the implementation of a regulatory mechanism. You can feel free to look at that model pet waste ordinance, that you can enforce it, and like I said, hopefully through education and outreach you can largely address the issue.
Amy Regal, you have a similar question. Did Cole answer your question?
I can answer Amy's question too. So yeah, you had a question regarding, is it okay to have a more of a generic statement that it's against city ordinance to to leave pet waste essentially? And yeah, that'd be fine. I don't think there's an expectation you have to cite the exact city code number. Obviously, if you want to do that, you're welcome to, but making it clear to residents and anyone else within your municipality that's against city ordinance to not pick up after your pet. It's fine to have a broad statement rather than citing specific ordinance language or the ordinance citation itself.
Perfect. Thank you.
And John Howard, you have a question about inspecting quarterly stockpiles. We did away with that requirement. And so that you are correct. It does not exist in the latest reissued permit. Randy Neprash, see, Dwayne, would you please explain how reporting and pollutant load reduction crediting should be handled for BMPs that are owned and operated by a watershed district but discharged directly to a permitted city MS4? Should the permitted city report the estimated load reductions from such BMPs? Anna, I don't know if you want to start out talking about that. I can certainly help, or what you prefer.
I'm just going to copy and paste it, and we can address it in the TMDL session.
Yeah, Randy, that might be, because this is a pretty general overview of the MS4 program. That's a pretty specific question. Would you mind if we did cover that in the TMDL session that we have? The next question is to, this is a long one. Sadie, to comment on the lack of public comment. When the notice came out in our small community, it said something about the public not being able to make comments on standards or regulations. I've been trying to find the local news release, but it looks like the webpage doesn't exist anymore, so apologies for the lack of special language. I originally sent a social media post about it to friends, but heard back that they had no idea what they could or should possibly comment on. I work on community outreach pertaining to stormwater, and I have higher degrees in earth and environmental science with a focus on water. And when opened a 32-page permit application, I felt lost and overwhelmed. I'm not in permitting or enforcement. I don't understand the nuance of all these questions, and I can't find a resource to help guide me through it. Just a thought on why there is no public comment yet. Sadie, can you clarify for me why there's no public comment on a particular municipality's application form? Is that the question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I was just saying, it was stated in the very beginning that there was no public comment on any of these yet. And I mean, I guess that surprised me a little that absolutely nobody else in the state did, but I guess I wanted to offer some insight as to why, at least in my community, people didn't comment. They didn't understand, the permit itself, and I couldn't point them towards any resources to help them better understand and look through this. And so people just kind of shrugged it off and no comments.
I think there's probably an element of that. This is a pretty complicated thing, this MS4 regulation, and one almost needs to understand what the permit says before they can make sense of a permit application. But we've tried to create a permit application that is fairly simplified. Yes, it is very long, many questions, many pages. However, it does get into some detail about what each individual municipality is doing to manage and protect stormwater in terms of the enforcement tools that they use, the inspection programs that they have, things like that. And I think a community member, maybe not even knowing a whole lot about stormwater regulation, can certainly look at that to see what their individual community is doing to manage stormwater, and if they have suggestions or do not agree with some of those details, they are certainly welcome to submit a comment. And so I guess that's what we expected. It's really hard to educate, all citizens out there on this level of detail. And so it's usually those who take an interest in environmental issues and stormwater management who sink their teeth into some of these things, and that's who we hear from. It's a tough situation, really, like you point out. I think that's all the questions that I see in the chat so far. Is there something that I've missed here or can better explain? All right. Well,
go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Oh, good. You go ahead, Cole.
I was just gonna say, as long as we still have most of our folks here still in attendance, does Carly, you had a Mentimeter, didn't you, that you wanted to kind of wrap up with?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, since it's kind of silent on the question, and if we want to go ahead and do that right now before anybody else drops off the meeting.
I think now would be a fine time to do it, and then we'll leave it open for another 5 minutes after that for more questions. I am here until 11 o'clock. We all are, and so we can open it up. But if we don't get anything in like 5 minutes, then we'll go ahead and shut down the session.
All right. So everybody that's still on the call, we're going to revisit the Mentimeter survey. So hopefully you still have it up in your browser. If you don't, I can copy the link and put it in the chat for everybody. But there's just a few more questions just to kind of gauge the the event today and how we should proceed with the next session. So the next question I'm going to ask is, in what order would you like to hear about the following topics? Please rate them based on their importance to updating your stormwater program. I realize there's a lot here. This is a rating question, so if you don't want to rate all 10 or all 9, just rate maybe like your top 3 that you would like to see, I guess, happen first, because we're trying to gauge maybe what our next session should be on. Is there any troubles? Oh, okay, good. Looks like people are finding their way there.
And I'd just like to suggest that this is pretty important for us, and so I really appreciate everybody taking the opportunity to do this question. This is really going to help us identify what you all find as priorities and what you see as most important, and this is going to help us form up our next sessions and in what order they'll be in. So this is really good. TMDLs is always the winner.
Go team. Right. I'll be busy for a while. Thanks, Randy.
All right, Carly, we can save this, right?
Yep.
Wonderful.
All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up and move on to the next question. How helpful was this information provided in this outreach session today? All right, I'm going to move on to our final question, which kind of is a spin-off of this one. But just going forward, how can we improve future outreach sessions? Do you have any suggestions for us going forward?
And this is kind of an open-ended thing. We should see responses fly in, I guess, right?
Yeah, if people have I mean, if you don't have suggestions too, that's fine. Donuts. Virtual donuts.
Oh, I am so with you on these things. This Mentimeter tool is really helpful. I really like it as well. And we will certainly be using that in future sessions, and we'll tailor it to the topic of the day as best we can. And like I said in the beginning of the session today, we do highly encourage questions to be submitted to us, a week or 2 or 3 ahead of every session so that we can best prepare those answers for you and cover those during the session. So I agree with that one. That is what we would like to see. Beer. Yeah, we'll try to see what we can do. I don't think, well, certainly I am not an expert in Teams and how it functions and whether we can cut the noise out when people are in the lobby or letting people in. I get the distracting piece of that, so we'll see what we can do.
I'm pretty sure we can just allow everybody to join the meeting without going in a lobby. So that should
Okay.
be for the future.
All right, I think I'm gonna wrap this up here in like 30 seconds. Is there any more suggestions for us?
Looks like there's a lot of interest in discussing the permit fee increases now, while we still have time to.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing and turn it back over to Dwayne to address the permit fee questions.
Okay. Yes, I'm just finishing reading those. So permit fees. I am not able to say a whole lot about the current permit fee process and effort. All I can tell you is that the agency is still very interested in adjusting the permit fees associated with stormwater and is currently in the process of doing some research and talking about it internally. But I guess what I can assure you is that the effort to revise the fee structure is active and still moving forward. And I wish I could provide more details to you, but it's been a long time in the making. There has been a pause for about the last 8 months. We put it on pause. We've had some change in leadership and some change in thoughts on the matter of fees as well. And so there's some reevaluation going on, but I guess all I can tell you for sure is that it is still active and it's still moving forward. Timelines, I have no idea. So, that probably was very, I probably let you down with that answer. I know that many of you would like more details about it, but that's all I can give you at this point in time. There's a question, is there an email list or website to review this recorded meeting? I think we're going to put this recording on our events page, are we not? Cole or Carly?
Yeah, the recording should be posted after we have it on the same location where you went to actually grab the link from the Stormwater Management Trainings webinar page.
Are the MPCA environmental specialists assigned to certain areas of the state? If so, is there a sign map and on the web site? And if not, can a map be generated? We are not geographically assigned in the program. It is more an equal distribution of different MS4 types among the stormwater specialists. And yes, we have a very, very nice list on the contacts page of the MPCA website with all 249 MS4s and which staff person is assigned to each MS4. And you can sort it and you can put it in alphabetical order to easily find your municipality and who is assigned. And Carly just put that in the chat.
Dwayne, there was a question a little earlier from, as a follow-up to the quarterly inspections from Megan. It says to follow up on quarterly facility inspections not being a requirement in the new permit. Can you clarify how this is not considered backsliding?
Cole, you want to take a shot at that one?
Sure. Yeah, so this was a requirement we heard a lot about from permittees, regarding documentation efforts, and it's something we sort of rolled into 21.4, which is permitting must implement BMPs that prevent or reduce pollutants and stormwater discharges from municipal operations that may contribute pollutants and stormwater discharges. So that is part of it. You need to have BMP still in place. You don't need to necessarily document your inspections of those, but if we were, say, performing an audit, we might go out to those facilities that you've identified in your inventory and make sure that you have an appropriate BMP in place. So the inspection requirement's no longer there, but you're still going to have to monitor those BMPs and inspect those BMPs periodically. And that associated documentation component is the one that's really gone.
Hey, Randy Neprash, we are in this stormwater business together. And if you would like a plug or would like to say something about this upcoming effort by EPA on the Stormwater Needs Survey, I invite you to click off your mic or your mute and just say a quick something about that and its importance.
Okay, I have unclicked. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Dwayne. So EPA does this thing called the Clean Watershed Needs Survey, where they quantify the project needs for wastewater projects and stormwater projects. Historically, stormwater data has been significantly underreported, and EPA is putting a good bit of effort into trying to get stormwater needs better reported and hence better quantified. As long as the stormwater needs are dramatically underreported, stormwater will not get the attention that it merits, either the focus or the funding that it merits from Congress. So we all want to try to do it better, and there's going to be efforts on the part of EPA, MPCA, MCSC, also the National Municipal Stormwater Alliance, to try to improve that. And the data portal is due, the national data portal is due to open in March of 2022. So watch for information over the next few months. Thanks, Dwayne.
You're welcome, Randy. Thank you for that. Is anybody aware of any questions we have not addressed at this point? All right, I'm going to let it go about 1 more minute. And if there are no questions in that 1 minute, I think we will go ahead and terminate the outreach session. Thank you, Kristen. Okay. Well, that ought to do it. I would like to thank everyone who is remaining for joining us today in this session. It is really great being able to talk with everybody and talk about this topic of the MS4 permit. So we will look forward to November 18th, which will be our next session. And based on the survey results that we saw earlier, I believe that we are going to plan the next session to be on minimum control measure 5. It would be TMDLs. However, we are not able to do a TMDL session in November due to staff availability, but maybe we can hold that one in December. So I think we're going to do minimum control measure 5 in November. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you next month. Have a good day. Bye.